They laughed when the blind black boy took the stage. Then his voice silenced everyone. The laughter started before he even reached the microphone. Some students whispered, others smirked, and a few couldn't hide their giggles. To them, it was just another cruel joke, letting a blind black boy sing at the school assembly. But as he stood there, hands trembling on the mic, something shifted. The air grew still, heavy with the kind of silence that only comes before something extraordinary. No one knew what would happen next, that this moment, meant to humiliate him, would instead become the most unforgettable performance in the school's history. Because when he finally opened his mouth, the laughter died instantly. Darius was born into a world that never expected much from him. Growing up blind in a small southern town wasn't easy, but growing up blind and black meant facing a double weight of prejudice. At school, the whispers followed him everywhere. Teachers spoke to him more slowly, as if blindness meant ignorance. Classmates avoided him or made cruel jokes behind his back. His mother, a nurse working double shifts, always told him, "Your blindness isn't your weakness. It's your proof that strength can't be seen." Those words became his anchor. Music was his escape. He couldn't see the keys, but he could feel them. Every note on the old piano in their living room was like a heartbeat, each song a way of speaking what the world refused to hear. When the school announced its annual talent show, Darius hesitated. His mother encouraged him, but he knew how the others saw him, a punchline waiting to happen. Still, he signed up, not for fame, not even for acceptance, but because deep inside, he wanted them to know that blindness didn't mean silence. As the day of the show approached, whispers spread fast. He's really going to sing? How's he even going to find the mic? They laughed, mocked, and planned to record it all for social media. Darius didn't know any of that. He only knew he'd practiced every night, feeling the rhythm in his chest, waiting for his one chance to turn pain into purpose. The auditorium was packed that morning. Parents, teachers, and hundreds of students filled the seats. The stage lights glared down, hot and merciless, as names were called one by one. Darius sat quietly backstage, gripping his cane, listening to the muffled applause that followed each act. When his name was finally announced, a wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone even called out, "Good luck finding the mic!" The teachers didn't stop it. They smiled awkwardly, pretending not to notice. But Darius strolled carefully, counting his steps. 1, 2, 3, until he reached the center. His mother had taught him to listen for space, to feel the air shift. And when he found the microphone stand, he simply whispered, "Thank you." The laughter quieted a little, replaced by a murmur of confusion. Then he began to sing. His voice wasn't just beautiful, it was powerful, haunting. It carried the weight of every insult, every lonely lunch, every whispered slur he'd endured. The melody rose and fell like waves crashing against stone, filling the room with something raw and sacred. Within seconds, the same kids who mocked him now sat frozen, their phones lowered, their faces pale. Teachers exchanged glances, some biting their lips, others fighting tears. Even the principal, who had doubted allowing him to perform, leaned forward, eyes wide. Every lyric felt like a declaration, not of pity, but of pride. He sang about darkness, not as something to fear, but as a space where light is born. His voice trembled at first, but with every note, it grew stronger, steadier, freer. When the final note lingered in the air, the silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Then came the sound that no one expected. Applause. Slow at first, then thunderous, echoing off the walls. The same crowd that laughed at his blindness now stood for his brilliance. As the applause roared, Darius stood still, unsure what to do. For the first time, he couldn't rely on his ears to guide him. The sound was overwhelming. His hands shook, and a single tear slipped down his cheek. Somewhere in the crowd, his mother stood up, clapping harder than anyone. She shouted, "That's my boy!" And the room erupted even louder. The bullies who'd mocked him couldn't meet his face. Their laughter had been replaced by shame. Teachers approached him afterward, suddenly full of kindness, saying how inspiring he was. But Darius didn't need their validation. He had something better: the quiet pride of knowing he had changed the room. He had sung not for approval, but for freedom. Later that week, videos of his performance spread online. Millions watched, calling him the voice of courage. News stations reached out. But to Darius, it wasn't fame that mattered. It was the moment he heard his classmates whisper something new. That's Darius, the singer. For once, his name wasn't followed by a cruel joke. It was followed by respect. Months passed, and the school that once mocked him began to change. The teachers introduced Diversity Week. Students started music clubs for kids with disabilities. And whenever new students joined, the story of the blind boy who silenced the school became legend. Darius kept singing, not for fame, but for healing. His performances in community centers and churches reminded people that the most valid form of strength often comes from the most underestimated souls. Years later, when asked about that day, Darius smiled softly and said, "They didn't give me a stage to shine. They gave me a stage to prove light doesn't need eyes to see." His story became a reminder, not just about racism or disability, but about the quiet revolution that happens when someone refuses to be defined by others' limitations. Because sometimes, the world doesn't need another superstar. It just needs someone brave enough to sing through the darkness and show us what real vision looks like. They laughed when he took the stage, but by the time he finished, no one dared to look away. Because courage, when it sings, silences the world.